country. Before I'd left the country, even was tight. Before that letter, because I was in Durban, because I 2 weeks holiday, another week to go, I think. And Frank suggested, had 2 weeks holiday, I can get you another week to go, I think. A job here. Frank suggested, you can become a resident here, get you and whatnot. A job here. Sounded like a good idea. Become a resident here and whatnot. As I said, I was 20. It sounded like a good idea at the time. I was, as I said, 70 now, something years old, you know. So I'm 70 now. He did the forms, and he suggested I write the letter. He told me what to write, and he said, and he suggested I write the letter. Off you go back. He told me what we didn't have mobile phones and stuff then. Off you go. I never heard from him again. We didn't have mobile phones. I heard from him again then. I think I never heard from him again. In fact, I heard from him again. That position was filled 2-3 months later. And he said, no, that position was filled by somebody else. And it was 42 years ago. Storm in a teacup. But there's absolutely, and it was 42 years ago. I've just read, but there's absolutely that. And I mean, I've just read again now.
So what are you saying, that you were not in fact in a predicament or in a quandary?
So what you saying,
wrote you were not in fact in a predicament or in a quandary? You wrote what he wrote, what he told you. So you,
at the time I was fully
you wrote an untruth in a letter addressed to the Director General. You wrote an untruth in a letter addressed to the Director General in order to influence that in 1982, in order to influence that either with a work permit or issue you permanent residence, either with a work permit or permanent residence.
Frank said, if you write this letter, I won't say it would untruth.
Well, why is it not an untruth?
Well, I suppose
when you now say 50 years later, well, why is it not an
untruth?
When you now say 50 years later,
it would have been a predicament. The job, so I suppose if I was given the job, but I wasn't given the job. So, but you know, in the 20s, you'll do things that perhaps you wouldn't do.
Well, it would have been in the 20s. It's a pity that perhaps you wouldn't do. Well, it would have been it's a pity explanation. You know, you give this. I don't know whether it will explanation, but the extent to which I don't know whether it's because I disclosed this letter to you and I didn't. It's because I disclosed on social media this letter to you and I didn't. I can assure you that I'm not on social media. Neither did any of my colleagues. I didn't pull it from social media. Neither did any of my colleagues. We get this information on good authority. I mean, we didn't disclose this information on good authority in your. And you didn't disclose it in your. I think in your affidavit. Not I think I know that my colleague. I think Advocate Mkhize, I know that my colleague with you, Advocate Mkhize, did raise it with you. Oh, you sorry. You raised it with her and said that this has now been brought to my attention. You raised it with her.
That's correct.
And said that this has now been brought to my attention.
When it was brought to my attention.
Yeah. On Sunday.
Yeah, and I finalized my affidavit, I think on Friday or Saturday. So it was brought to my attention. I said, oh, you know, but there's so much other stuff on social media. Why should we put all that in your affidavit? There's stuff on social media which is completely fake.
Yeah, Mr. Sullivan, you know, I'm always pressed for time. So I don't worry about social media. I want to ask about this letter, because you also write your work permit was refused. In other words, what I'm trying to understand, and you must please help us, is that this is not some casual letter written by a 20-year-old on the advice or guidance of a more senior person, presumably Mr. Frank Martin, or an MP, to say, just write this down. This is serious. You say you had applied for a work permit, but it was refused. And now and your intention is not to holiday here. It is, and I'm paraphrasing your letter, it's to start work and to apply for permanent residence, and for the reasons that you've given. This is a Christian country, don't have these communist unions here. You like the people here. You even want to learn to speak Afrikaans.
Well, unfortunately, if you're offered an opportunity, I thought it would a good opportunity at the time, and I went along with it. The reality of it is, I don't remember getting a work permit or being refused a work permit. I never came to work here in pursuit of that, and I only later, in 1989, which was 7 years later, applied for a residence permit on the basis of being a person of independent means. So I didn't see it as being anything other than that.
Well, we now know from your evidence that we accept that these letters as authentic. Because you see, this changes the reasons why you came to South Africa in 1989. The impression you create in your affidavit and the early part of your evidence is that, in fact, the market or the property market, I forget now, but you can correct me, in the UK had collapsed and you were looking for business opportunities and you came to South Africa in 1989. So the impression you create is that you're entirely disinterested in this country, other than this is an opportunity to invest and to make money. You said, no, of course, if you invest, you want to make money. But that's the extent of your interest. Now we read a letter that you wrote to a member of parliament to say, look, I'm in a predicament, I'm in a quandary. This is some 7 years before you eventually came here in 1989. And that you had already applied then for a work permit. You had already applied, and I'm paraphrasing from your letter, for a course in Afrikaans, as I want to completely integrate with the South African way of life. Do you accept that this puts a different narrative or background to why you entered South Africa in 1989?
No, I don't. And the reason for that, Chairman, I didn't just come here to invest and make money. I had been coming here every year for a holiday for many years. And I invested in property here before I took a decision to come and live here. I had already acquired property in 1987, but I didn't apply for permanent residence then. I bought another property in 1988. It was in 1989 that I decided, you know what, I like this country, we must go and live there. And then I applied, and my application was granted.
Yes, but let's deal with that. Is in 1989 and after that. Because unless, again, you were told to write this and you didn't really mean it, in other words, it's not true, you say, sir, and I quote from your letter, it would break my heart if I now have to return to the UK. You're actually desperate to stay here because, as you say, you're in a quandary, you're in a predicament. And then you go on to say, I beg you humbly to speak on my behalf to someone in a position to consider me as an immigrant. So in 1982, November, you expressed a desire. You pleaded, you want to stay here as an immigrant. You didn't want to return to the UK or to England.
It was probably an exaggeration. The reality of it is...
So you exaggerated.
In that
you wrote some untruths.
I wouldn't say
you exaggerated.
I exaggerate.
Can we take Honorable Nomvalo?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, we just wanted to make a request on record that may the witness, even if it's during lunch or after hours, produce evidence showing that a member of Parliament, Honorable Colleen, posted some defamatory something about him, because we stated on the record that our member has never done that. She has never posted anything on any social media platform. But we request that you provide that proof to us, even if you can provide it after today's session. You can ask for your team, from your team, to look for it now.
Can I answer, Chairman?
Yes,
So Chairman, I don't have social media. Somebody showed it to me on a phone. And it looked to, I mean, from what I can remember, it showed the person as being Colleen Makubela. And that's why I can't remember if it was on Twitter or Toktik or whatever. I can't remember.
It's TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Somebody showed it to me. And yeah, I can't go back and look for something that I don't have.
The person is from the MKP.
And I think I pointed this out earlier, that it appeared to be a person called Colleen or Colin Makubela from the MK party. So yeah, if I can't find that, then I can't find it, but it appeared to me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do the best I can, but I don't have social media. So yeah.
Honorable Nomvalo, your question has been responded to.
No, unfortunately, Chair, he is not sure of what he's talking about. Then I think we are helpless under the circumstances because our member has never posted anything of that nature. Hence, we make a request that he provides proof to us. Because our member is even ready to depose to an affidavit. She has never posted anything of that
You
nature.
confirm to him that you have a member called Colin Makube.
Do have a member called the former chief whip of the MK party. I think she's all known to us, but she has never posted anything of that nature. So I think it's wrong and unfair for the witness to say something that is untrue about her while she is not even here to respond for herself.
Honorable Skosana.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this issue of casting aspersions without evidence, I always question witnesses. We had witnesses last week. When you ask for evidence, they are evasive. Now, Mr. O'Sullivan say he saw from someone on his phone. Now, it's a hearsay. You saw that alone. We want evidence here. Because now we are painting someone, you know, and without any substantiated evidence to the honorable members here. We can't deal with gossip here. Thank you, Chair.
Can you just say you disagree with that statement and we move forward? Honorable Malem.
No, Chair. They're raising a serious issue. If the witness is not sure, instead of you asking them to say they disagree with the statement, you should ask the witness to withdraw that. Because he cannot just come here and then say thumbsuck things here. If he's not sure, the only way to close this matter is that he withdraws that and then we move forward. Because he's not sure if it's Honorable Colin who posted that. And to cast aspersion on our fellow member and then we just pass like that, it is unfair. So if the witness is not prepared to produce any evidence to that effect and is not sure, can we please request him to withdraw that allegation?
Chairman, I'm going to go back to the person that showed me and see if I can get a screen grab or something of that nature. And if I can't get that, I'll withdraw the statement I made. Is that acceptable?
No, the statement is withdrawn. What you are sharing with us now is information, it's not evidence.
Okay, the statement is withdrawn.
It
Chairman.
only becomes evidence when you can substantiate it. Advocate Arense.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So, Mr. O'Sullivan, your application for a work permit had been refused.
I don't even remember.
Well, that's what you say in your letter.
Yes, but I can't, we're talking about 42 years ago. I just can't remember. As good and everything as my memory is, I can't remember what happened 42 years ago.
And you you, you had then given some details of yourself and copies of your certificates and references.
I can't remember.
So can we have sight of these certificates and references that you enclosed with this application at the time?
If we can get them from the person that supplied these documents, I would be happy to do so, but I cannot remember, Chairman, what certificates and application or whatever the case may be. So I really can't assist if I can't remember.
Now, when were you given South African permanent residency?
I think it was 1989, November or December or October. It was late 89.
And at the time, of course, we were then still not a democratic country, and would what you have said in your letter that we discussed, would it have still been the case that you love this country? Because it's a Christian country.
So I love
They're no communists. Yeah.
Chairman, I loved the country. In 1989, I loved the country because of the nature of the people in the country. And I had some good friends here, and I liked the weather, and there were business opportunities.
I asked you earlier about whether you said you had been to then Rhodesia, but you had no interaction or connection or association with the Rhodesian police or security forces.
Yeah, before we move to Rhodesia, may we take Honorable Ngola.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I consider the year that which Mr. O'Sullivan became a citizen very important for the proceedings of this ad hoc committee. It is quite astonishing that he doesn't seem to be remembering anything. Was the SC is trying to bring to his attention a letter where some Mr. Watterson wrote to the Internal Affairs in respect of his application for citizenship in 1982. But he seems not to remember even the fact that they said is going to be useful to the white community in South Africa. I want to propose, Chair, that can the committee take on its accord right to the Director General of the Department of Home Affairs, just for a confirmation of the year at which Mr. O'Sullivan became a citizen of the Republic of South Africa, so that we can be able to draw it closer to where may he perhaps made applications to be permanent. Thank you.
Honorable Malema.
Yeah, I fully agree with that suggestion, but also must be given the motivation why he was given that citizenship. We must check if learning Afrikaans was the only criteria which was followed or what.
Yeah, remember Honorable Watterson at the time also motivated that he will be of good use to the white community in the Republic. So we will write that letter to check what was the motivation that was made for his acquisition of citizenship and inquire whether the Afrikaans qualification was, how important was that Afrikaans qualification? I'm not seeing any further hands, honorable members. My assumption is that you want us to proceed. Are you done with your consultations? The two advocates. You are very quiet today, Advocate Mokhaitz. I miss your voice.
He's agreeing with us, Chair.
Okay, can we proceed?
Mr. O'Sullivan, was Mr. Frank Martin Bureau of State Security operative?
No, Chairman. He was a MEC for transport and horse racing in Natal, what was then called Natal.
So you do remember that clearly?
Yes, he was a friend, but I don't recall this fellow Waterson. And I don't, I've never seen that letter before in my life. By the way, I never said to anybody, I'll be a useful contribution to the white community. I would never have made such a statement.
But you did?
I didn't.
No, in your handwritten letter?
I did. I don't recall having said that. I don't recall having said that.
You certainly mentioned that you want to learn to speak Afrikaans.
Yeah, I may have said that, but I don't recall having said that I would like to contribute to the white community.
You said you had already applied for a course in Afrikaans and I want to completely integrate with the South African way of life.
Yeah, but did I say that I wanted to contribute to the white community? I wouldn't have said that. And the reason I wouldn't have said that is because I'm firmly anti-racist. So there's no way I would have said, I want to contribute to the white community. It just wouldn't have happened.
Well, you said that you want to completely integrate into the South African way of life. What was the South African way of life in 1982? For us, what we had to have today, and I'm not giving evidence.
Yes.
It's just a fact. Was seemingly light years away, and for most of us, we said it will never happen in our lifetime.
Yes, so I wasn't.
So you were thinking specifically of a white,
South African
racist-dominated society at the time, and you wanted to integrate into this way of life by specifically learning to speak Afrikaans, when arguably, I do remember, I'm old enough to remember MP Watterson was one of the English-speaking MPs.
So, in my view, the South African way of life in those days was nice weather, outside activities, boating, swimming,
Braaivleis.
Pardon?
Braaivleis,
all
rugby.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was not interested in contributing to, for example, apartheid or anything of that nature. That wouldn't have been anything that I would have been interested in.
No. Mr. Sullivan, that is directly in contradiction to your own handwritten letter, which says that it would break your heart if you were not granted this status because you want to integrate into this society.
So I think, you know...
Then a white-dominated society. Apartheid, separate development, forced removals, separate education, group areas, homelands.
Yeah. In my 20s, at that stage of my life, I didn't even understand all of that. I had, what was that? In those days, I didn't understand all of that. I didn't even know the existence of a group areas. Of course, I know about it now. I had no knowledge. I had some knowledge, but I didn't have full knowledge of all the things that were going on. And had I have become a citizen at that stage, I would have helped contribute.
Are you
towards-
saying you were naive?
Pardon?
Are you saying that you were naive?
No, I'm not saying I was naive, but had I have,
Well, then it's worse.
what do you mean it's worse?
If you weren't, if you can say, I'm young and naive, I didn't really understand politics, I just wanted to do.
I'm not now naive. I thought you meant, are you naive? Then I probably was naive.
Yeah, well, but in 1982, you were already an electrical engineer. You were a learned person, certainly more learned than the average person, I would say, I would think, even in England.
Yes, possibly so. But, when you're in your 20s, you have a different view on life as you would have later in life.
So what I want to drive to is that you were at this stage then recruited
By who?
by the security agency of this country at the time.
Not a chance. Absolutely none whatsoever. Frank Martin wasn't involved. I mean, actually, I knew Frank Martin very well. He was a train driver before the war. And then during the war, he became a prisoner of war, and he shared space with my late father. And after the war, he got back into driving trains.
But you
And then-
Mr. Sullivan, sorry, you're not trying to minimize and trivialize what is really a serious situation, that a letter is even addressed, which seems to be based on information given, false information, to the Director General of the Interior Ministry of this country at the time. Now you're trivializing, Frank Martin was just a train driver, met you in the ex-servicemen's club, presumably just to drink beer, and you were a young 20-odd-year-old naive.
I'm not
But this is the completely different impression we got from your affidavit, in the early part of your affidavit, and the narrative that you've given us. Certainly, when consulting and when reading it, this is a fairly well-heeled, well-educated person coming from the UK. We can't complain when people want to invest their money in our country, buying property, hopefully, creating jobs for our people. But that's not the impression that one now gets when you read this letter and the application for permanent residence or even to become an immigrant.
I don't even remember at the time filling in any forms. So I wrote a 2-page handwritten letter. The typewritten letter I'd never seen before in my life. It is what it is.
And what also then strikes one with looking at your background from this viewpoint and different viewpoint is, within the space of a year, you decide to become a police reservist.
I was asked to become a police reservist.
Who is this Major Edwards?
He was the husband of my then secretary. I mean, if I could track him down, I don't even know him now.
Did you not look at his background? Well, it could be, because this is one reads about or sees in a movie. He could have been involved in the security services. He could have been a boss. You remember that word, boss? Bureau of State Security? Yes. So he could have been such an operative.
So his wife was my secretary. He was the station commander at Halfway House Police Station. And this suggestion that I should become a police reservist took place after the democratization process had started in South Africa. And that democratization process is what triggered me to take a decision to apply for permanent residence, because I felt that I didn't want to live in a country where apartheid existed. I took up the opportunity or the request to become a police reservist after Nelson Mandela had been released from prison and the ANC had been unbanned. And I saw opportunities. I thought there will be good opportunities to help make a democratic country. And I played my part. In fact, you can get on the phone now and speak to the erstwhile president, Kgalema Motlanthe, and ask him who came to see him in Shell House, which was then the headquarters of the ANC. Ask him who came to see him in Shell House to notify him of the existence of a game farm in the Northwest Province where some very strange things were going on. You can phone him and ask him.
Well, I'm not going to do that.
And
I
that
do have
game
a
farm,
lot
by
of
the way,
respect
is
for
now known as
Honorable
Black
Mr. Motlanthe. I'm not going to ask you that because I don't want to be distracted from what I'm asking you.
Okay.
Because this could easily fit into the narrative of someone who has infiltrated either the security forces or other intelligence forces in our country, that you would have had such meetings. You would have gone to Shell House. You would have met these important persons whose names you are dropping. But what I want to ask you about, because this is not what you say in your affidavit. Can I take you to paragraph 14 of your affidavit? In 1990, my secretary's husband, a certain Major Edwards in the SAPS, having heard of my background, persuaded me to join the South African Police Reserve. I took the view that if a country is good enough to live in, it's good enough to serve. In 1990, I joined SAPS as a reserve at the halfway house, now Midrand, where I completed training as a detective. As a reservist, I was required to donate approximately 8 hours per week of my time at no cost to the SAPS. Now, this is some 8 years later, after you wrote a letter to a member of parliament at the time, who in turn wrote to the Director General of Internal Affairs, pleading for this young person, this young man, to be given immigrant status. Because it'll break his heart if he must go back to England. He wants to stay here and learn Afrikaans. He wants to integrate with a Christian white community.
I never said I wanted to integrate with the Christian white community.
That's what your letter says, Mr.
No, my letter
I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it
my
says.
letter doesn't say that. I'm
Well,
sorry.
and then I'll be disciplined if I'm misrepresenting what you're saying.
It's a misunderstanding of what I'm saying. I never stated that I wanted to integrate into a Christian white community.
Well, it's clearly to be inferred from what you're saying, from the language that you use. And I don't want to waste further time
Chairman,
by reading back.
at the time I emigrated to the country, I'd completely forgotten about this letter of 8 years or 9 years earlier. It was gone from my mind. In fact, I can't remember the year, but it was either 87 or 88 when my dear Frank Martin, God rest his soul, passed away. And it was the furthest thing from my mind.
You see what will also strike one, and obviously the honorable committee members and members of the public will make up their own minds. But certainly what struck me is that your role as a police reservist and what you did is one of two things. It is highly commendable for the time and effort that you've given to assisting our regular police in doing their law enforcement job. It's either that, or on the other hand, this is most extraordinary for a police reservist to be trained as a detective, to achieve an award for the most arrests, to be trained to do a train-the-trainer course and train 1,000, what did you say, 1,500 other reservists to graduate and to get their certificate, including our Honorable President. So you have quite some notable students under your belt. You worked, and I'm looking at paragraph 16. You worked in the fraud unit at the then John Foster Square. You, as you know, was notorious. You lectured. You were elected chairman of the Community Policing Forum, paragraph 17. You formed Johannesburg Watch. So at all times, you were involved in policing. You were close to the action. And of course, by doing so, you're also close to other law enforcement people, intelligence officers involved in law enforcement in our country.
As a police service.
Yes. Because of the I'm saying those are the extraordinary things you did as a police reservist.
Yeah, Chairman.
I know a very, very good colleague of mine. He's actually one of our best advocates. He's a police reservist. You know, at night, in his own time, he goes with the police and they do neighborhood watch, they do patrols and all that. And his life is often in danger. He's been shot a few times or shot at a few times. That's the extent of what he does. And he's a highly intelligent person.
I was doing the same. I was going out on the streets with police officials, doing crime prevention work, attending to crime scenes, carrying out investigations because I was a detective, and making the necessary arrests. I worked with full-time detectives. At all times, I had no dealings whatsoever with the intelligence services. The crime intelligence, in my knowledge, was something that happened somewhere else. I had no involvement in it whatsoever. Later that changed. After the year 2000 or after the 2002 or 2003, I started to understand what crime intelligence was and where it fitted into the big picture. But up until then, I had no idea about it.
Now, it's only because I am old enough to remember this. But do you know, do you recall that the same Mr. Powell that you referred to was in fact a security policeman?
I don't know who Powell is. That name I don't remember. I have no knowledge of who that person is.
It was referenced in the letter.
Yeah, but I have no knowledge of who that person is.
And do you know that he was involved in at the time in KwaZulu-Natal? I don't want to unfairly, unnecessarily, or in a defamatory way attribute it to Nkatha, but at the time he was connected with Nkatha in KZN. Were you not aware of that?
None whatsoever. In fact, until I saw this, because I never kept a copy of any letter back 42 years ago until I saw this last week. If you'd have said to me, who's Jim Powell? I have no idea. No idea whatsoever.
So before we move on or forward, Mr. O'Sullivan, is it your evidence today that you've at no stage ever been involved with the security police, either the one before 1994, before 1992, when things started to change in this country, or afterwards?
As God is my witness, I was never involved with the security police in South Africa. And I'm stating that again under oath, never once in my life was I involved. And if anybody wants to make inquiries at Boyson's police station, and by the way, I have a lot more press cuttings than what you've seen there. There's another document there. I can't remember the page, but it's included. And if you have a look at it, Chairman, either just before or just after that picture of handing Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa the award. I'm just looking for it now. I'll give you the page number. By the way,
Well, we know, and I'm sure that the honourable members would have read your
Chairman, that's
affidavit.
important evidence. If one looks at page 55.
Of your affidavit.
No.
Of the annexes.
A55. Okay.
That's after the.
It's after the page
after
that
the
shows.
picture with the
Yes.
honourable president.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an article that appeared in the Citizen newspaper in 1977. It says millions in forged post orders claim. And it refers to forged 100 Rand postal orders, which were circulating in Johannesburg. And we got approached at the fraud unit. We got approached. And by the way, that would have then no longer been John Vorster Square. It would have been Johannesburg Central Police Station. We got approached with a view to trying to find out where these forged postal orders were coming from. And I spent time, my time and energy, and we tracked down who was printing and issuing these forged postal orders. And this details the court case in respect of that. And if you go back to the page before the letter that we dealt with for, which was 53, if we go to page 52, that's an article dated July 27, 1995, Chairman. It's the Southern Courier, which is a newspaper that deals with the southern suburbs of Johannesburg. And the headline is The Highs and Lows of Drugs. And if you have a look there, you can see the whole story is about people that are buying drugs on the street. And if you look at the bottom of the story, it says the technical aspects of this article were prepared for the Southern Courier by Detective Sergeant Paul O'Sullivan of the SAPS. Seen in the picture is Detective Sergeant O'Sullivan together with female constable Vermaak, making an arrest of 2 suspects with dagga and cocaine. That's far removed from being involved with intelligence services. That's,
Well, before I ask Honourable Chair for my colleague Advocate Mkhize just to take over for a short while, I want to please be excused. I just want to say that it's also the perfect front to have these awards, meet all these important people, current president, former president, drop their names, and to continue some other undercover covert work. So on the face of it, yes, I've said to you, it's impressive. And one can get a lot of credit for that kind of work. But it doesn't dispel or put pay to any theory that you have been or are involved also with other intelligence activities.
Is that a question? The reality of the situation is, I've stated a few minutes ago, and I'm stating again, while I was a police reservist, I was never involved in any way, shape, or form with any intelligence activity of any nature whatsoever. And since living in this country, I have not been involved in any way, shape, or form with any intelligence activity whatsoever. And that is it in a nutshell.
Honorable James.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned because it would appear that the witness has done quite a lot under the previous dispensation. We know that reservists are only allowed to operate in the visible policing environment. Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, you did fraud, you worked in the fraud unit, you made the most arrests, you were on active crime scenes. Do you have anyone that can vouch for this? Like a commander that you must have worked under because you were doing duties of a SAPS member?
Chairman, the regulations changed. In those days, a reservist could work with a unit, whichever unit he went to work with. And I was asked to work with the detective branch at Boyson's police station, which I did. And after an incident that took place in 1996, where I was shot, I was no longer able to carry out possible physical work relating to if you had to arrest somebody that became violent or something like that. So I then changed. I was said, you know, you're very good at what you're doing. You can go and work in the fraud unit. And that's what I did. And as for going back 30 years to find somebody that may be able to come and tell you, I can look, but it might not be that I can find somebody today or tomorrow that can come and say, by the way, he did this and that and what. But I can try.
So your title was detective sergeant.
I was a detective sergeant, Chairman, and that article that I just referred you to refers to me as a detective inspector, but that was what do you call it? A misunderstanding by a journalist. I was a detective sergeant. That's it, short and sweet.
Were you a reservist detective sergeant?
Correct. Now, the regulations in the police today for the reservists are different than where they were in the 90s. Now, the reservists, from what I understand, are in uniform. I worked, by the way, when I finished working as a detective sergeant at Johannesburg Central Police Station, I then relocated to the border police.
Chair, can I just wrap up?
OR Tambo Airport. And I was working in the border police for 2 years.
Honorable James, may you?
So just to wrap up, just so that I can be clear on this. So you are a forensic investigator, meaning that you dig deeper, you get information, and you are not able to tell this committee and give us evidence in terms of the time you worked as a SAPS detective. Am I correct? You are not able to give us anything that can justify everything that you have told this committee here today.
No, Chairman, that's not.
You're not. Did you have a force number?
Yes.
So you can't go back onto the system and track your force number and give us some form of evidence that this is what you've done, because even we can go and query that.
Chairman, I don't have access to the system. My force number.
No, we'll get it. That's fine.
Sorry,
Thanks.
I'm being asked a question and then I'm being given the answer. On page 53, A53, Chairman, there's a letter there dated 26th of June, 1997. And it says, Detective Sergeant Paul Robert O'Sullivan, force number 0245-296-1. There's my force number.
Thank you.
You know, anybody can go on the system through the necessary channels and find out. I was a police reservist until Jackie Celebi cancelled my work as a police reservist.
Yeah, we will come to the Jegis Levy matter. May his soul rest in peace. Honorable Matthias.
Also on a point of clarity, when Mr. O'Sullivan joined this police reservist, were you a South African citizen then?
Chairman, I wasn't a South African
Okay,
citizen.
that's fine.
I was a permanent resident. But in those days, the regulations required that you be either a citizen or a permanent resident.
You were a citizen at that time.
No.
No,
you
Chairman,
wasn't.
I was a permanent resident.
Mm.
The regulations were changed in 2000 or 2000.
Mr. Sullivan, you
You have
answered
to-
that already. And then just on the second point, Chair, so we need to do back office work here and get the regulations of what was happening with the police reservist unit during that, so we can just be workshopped on that, because I don't know which country would allow a non-South African to be this involved in our systems and having
Let's
access
not
to
debate the
information.
matter.
Thank
I
you.
think
No, we're
the-
not, just so we make sure we
The
follow.
point has been made. Abazel.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. We are at paragraph 18 of your statement. And we are still paragraph 18, page 7. And we are just about to wrap up your time as a reservist. At paragraph 18, this is now 10 years since you'd started as a reservist and you were based at the airport, Johannesburg. At the time, it was Johannesburg International Airport.
That's correct, Chairman.
And you say in your statement that you were at that point part of a national team in the Border Police of Johannesburg. What was your specific role?
So the role of the Border Police, we worked together at the airport in 2 or 3 areas. One area was to prevent drug trafficking through the international port. Another area would be to make sure that people weren't coming through with forged documentation, for example, a fake passport. People that were involved in human trafficking. So actually, I was very successful in helping to stamp out human trafficking. We achieved quite a bit of work there. The other area we worked on was counterfeit goods. What's that noise?
You can continue.
Is it just in my ear or?
Yes.
There would be importation of counterfeit goods. So we would go and do random checks together with the customs officers to identify counterfeit goods.
Could you name the specific successes that you were able to achieve in that period?
Yeah, we had quite a few successes. Chairman, may I refer to some documents to help expand on that? I would like to go to page A62. By the way, at that stage, I was a police reservist and I was in the group executive for aviation security.
Yes, but I haven't reached the point at which you're an executive at AXA. I'm still just finalizing the point at which you were a reservist, specifically at the airport.
Yes, so we would have made quite a few arrests on the human trafficking side. In particular, labor human trafficking. We would have made quite a few arrests on drug trafficking. We made quite a few arrests on people with forged travel documents. And I'm talking about passports, you would have what we call returned traffic individuals. So some people that we trafficked, they knew they were being trafficked and they wanted to be trafficked and they were trafficked for labor. And certain countries I don't want to name the countries in case I'm accused of defaming them, but certain countries in the Eastern Asia area, they would traffic individuals here who would come voluntarily so that they could then go and work in sweatshops or in spaza shops out in the bush.
Yeah.
And they would spend 3 years here. Their passports would be taken by their employers. And when they left, you could see that they'd overstayed their visa or their visitor's permit. And they couldn't leave the country now because their passport, they would hide it in their luggage. And they would go to the embassy and say that they came on such and such a date and their passport was stolen. And they would be issued with what's known as a temporary travel document.
Thank you, Mr.
Which is
O'Sullivan.
valid for a one-way trip.
Thank you. You mentioned that at the time, as a reservist, it was volunteer work, and you were not receiving any pay for the work that you were doing. What work were you doing at the time that was not volunteer work, your full-time job? What was your job at the time?
When I started working at the airport,
At the airport, yes.
in the border police,
Yes.
I was involved in property development.
You're in property development, okay. You also mentioned at paragraph 18 that you worked in excess of 40 hours a week, which is the equivalent of what one would work in full-time employment. How did you manage to work 40 hours a week on volunteer work and still run your own property development entity?
Yes, so it's quite easy to explain, Chairman. In those days, I was a lot younger than I am now. I was also hyperactive. So I would start work early in the morning, finish in the afternoon, and then go and put 5 hours in at the airport. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I used to work because I enjoyed the work. So, and I say average, I didn't work 40 hours every week, but sometimes I was able to work in excess of 40 hours. When I was having the opportunity to do so, I would do it.
Yeah. Mr. O'Sullivan,
Honorable Malema.
okay.
No, Mr. O'Sullivan, it is actually incorrect and unbelievable that you will say you want to come to South Africa and be integrated into the way of living without knowing what was happening in South Africa in the 80s, because the 80s were the most volatile years of our time. There were killings, there were state of emergencies declared. If I'm not wrong, in 86, I think it was declared twice. The youth were on the streets, people being killed. Even at your 20s, there's no way you can escape that point and come here and say, no, I didn't know what was happening. Maybe I was naive. That is incorrect. And then the only thing you're telling us is weather. You call the bodies of our people on the floor weather. So that was what was happening at the time. People were being killed. And you wanted to come and join that kind of lifestyle of killing people. Are you not aware that people were being killed at that time when you were applying to become a citizen in South Africa?
I only applied to become a citizen in South Africa in 1994. And I became a citizen in 1995. So it's a reality that I had not applied to become a citizen. And it's also a reality that I have not stated that I did not know what was going on in the country at the time. I knew what was going on, but I didn't know the level of detail that I later found out. Because as you spend more time in a country, you find out more. So you know. That's my evidence.
But in the letter you wrote, Mr. O'Sullivan, you spoke about the 80s and that you were just 20 and you had no idea, and we can still say maybe you were naive at that time. It can't be correct that you're talking about 95. There was an interest in the 1980s. And you were interested in the weather in the 80s, and I'm saying to you, it can't be correct. And worse, you didn't have to stay in South Africa to know what was happening in South Africa. There was a big anti-apartheid movement in Britain, in London. Surely you knew the release Nelson Mandela campaign, very prominent in Britain, and you come here and tell us you wanted to come and settle in a country where people are demanding the release of Nelson Mandela, where children are being killed and all of that, because you were naive, you knew a little bit of what was happening. That is unacceptable. I don't think it's an acceptable explanation. You came to our country to become part of the privileged at the expense of the exploited. Will I be correct to make that observation?
Chairman, definitely not correct.
I didn't hear the answer, Chair.
May I request you that when an honorable member asks you a question, you look at them and respond to the question.
Chairman, I'm not able to turn and look without moving my chair. I don't have, because of my spine, I don't have the ability to turn and look that way. Unless I'm given a chair that's got wheels on and I can move it easily, I don't have the ability to turn and look in that direction. So if somebody can provide me with a chair with wheels on that I can move easily, I will be able to turn and look.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Now I can look.
Yeah, I was worried about that because for the earlier part of the morning, you could imagine when honorable members ask you questions and
Now we have a problem, Chair. I have to have a firm back behind me and this thing's moving. I can't lean, I have to be able to lean back without the chair moving.
the chair does not have to move.
Hang on. Oops. Yeah. Yeah, they are there. There's somebody that understands these chairs is able to fix it so that when I lean back, it doesn't go away like that.
Mr. Mpilo, let's assist. And
No, I don't want to go down. Put it back up again. Ah, that's it. Thank you. Now it's fixed.
is it fine now?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I can lean like this without it going over like that.
Can you turn it to my side? Let's see.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can you turn it to that side? Let's see. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, look at Honorable Malema and talk to him.
Afternoon.
Were you done, Honorable Member?
I'd asked a question and then he gave an answer. That's when I said I didn't hear the answer.
Can we proceed?
I didn't get the answer.
Okay.
The answer was that what you said, would that be correct? And my answer Chairman, was that would not be correct.
Thank you. And then the handwritten letter, do you recognize your handwriting there?
Chairman, I feel that is my handwriting. But as I said, 42 years ago, I'd completely forgotten about it until somebody showed it to me the other day. So, yeah, I believe it is my handwriting.
Let's put it differently. Is that your handwriting on that letter?
I believe it is, Chairman.
Chair, what is the answer now?
There is no answer.
Is that your handwriting on that letter?
I believe that's my handwriting on that letter.
No, I'm not asking about belief. I'm asking about whether that letter is authentic and it's your handwriting that you see on there. You may not remember the content, but surely all of us remember our handwriting.
So I would probably say that is my handwriting.
Thank you. And then lastly, how do you say to us you don't remember who was your commander? Is probably 30 years ago and all of that? Because obvious, every police station in a particular year has got a station commander, has got this, has got that. And those people that we worked with for such a long time, and then giving people certificates that are not recognized by any institution, and giving them awards which you bought from a shop or Discom or something like that. You should remember those people. There's no way you can work with people and achieve these things that you said you have achieved, and you don't remember under whose command. As a person who's trained in military intelligence, a person who has been a reservist without being a citizen in South Africa, and having served for such a long time, there is no way you cannot remember who was a commander of these operations, because the discipline of what you are doing actually requires that you know your commanders.
Thank you, Chairman. I did not say I don't know who was my commander. The station commander in those days was Director Vermaak, and the detective branch commander was a Colonel Badenhorst. So, but I've never said, nobody said to me, who's your commander? And I've never said, I don't remember who my commander was.
No, the question was, these things that you are telling us, is there a person who was commanding you who we can make contact with, who can confirm that indeed these achievements were made? And you said, no, I can't remember, it's 30 years ago or plus. I think it was asked by Honorable James.
Sorry, Chairman. The reality is that I didn't say I can't remember who my commander was. I said I would have to look into it and find out. And if you go back on the record and play it again, you will hear that I said I would have to go and find out who. I don't even know if Director Vermaak is still alive. Our Colonel Badenhorst, I cannot say whether or not he's still around, because with 30 years ago, and with all due respect, I was a lot younger then, and they were a lot older than me. So if I can find somebody, but in the meantime, what I have done to try and evidence what I've said in my affidavit is I've attached some, just some, by the way, there's a lot more newspaper cuttings about the work that we did. And not one of those newspaper cuttings, Chairman, mentioned anything about intelligence services or anything like that. It was all about the successful work that we did and what we achieved in proper policing. Thank you, Chairman.
You see, the problem is going to be when you ask yourself questions and answer your own questions. No one asked you if those people were still alive or not. Whether you are dead or alive, if you have been my commander, I will still mention you as being my commander, and the files will dictate that, of course, the person is still alive or not alive. We didn't ask if your commanders are still alive or not. We asked, who can we reference this thing with, that these things that you are telling us, to confirm maybe your commander or any of the people that might have supervised some of your activities. And I'm happy that without referencing anything contrary to what you said, I have to reference and check because some of these people, you were able to give us some names and we can work from there.
And
Thank you,
Chairman, it's clear if you look at the letters, which is page A53, it's addressed to the station commissioner at Boyson's SAPS. It says for the attention of Director Vermaak. And it's signed by Jay Schultz, Senior Superintendent, Head of Training. Now, I can go away and find out if there's somebody that still has knowledge of the work that we did back then that can come and say, yes, he did this, or no, he didn't do that, he did this, and what. But it wasn't put to me until now that I should be able to find such a person.
Whip.
No, thanks, Chair. I was very interested to the question that was raised earlier on by Honorable Malema, and I wanted to make a follow-up on it, but in this particular way, Mr. Sullivan. My own understanding, and I may be wrong, is that most of us largely have the value system that defines who we are imparted on us at a very young age. And I mean really in the 10, 15 years, at 20 years from where you were in the 80s, from what I'm hearing, you are already formed as a citizen. That's why you can even want to travel to another country. You are well formed, you understand the environment within which you live in. Now, in the light of the question that Mr. Malema was raising about what appears to have been a level of ignorance or naivety on your part about the country that you were beginning to have a very keen interest to go and work, which is South Africa. How do we reconcile that part? How do we reconcile that with what is said in your statement? Your statement is littered with examples of how you have, over a period of time, 20, 30 years, made interventions to fight against injustice. How do we reconcile that? Because I think you becoming a proponent or a fighter for justice could not have been something that just occurred after 1994. In the early 80s, the way in which injustices was perpetrated in the country, which is what Mr. Malema was raising, should have really said something to you as you were about to decide that I'm traveling to South Africa, in a country where the overwhelming majority of the people, especially from the Black community, were major victims of a white perpetrated system of injustice. How do we reconcile that? If somebody listens to you today and the 20-year-old you then, who, as I said, by that time at 20 years, should have been already imbued with a particular value system about what is right and wrong and what to stand for. That's what I wanted to hear your comment on in relation to that question and that matter.
No, Chairman, that's quite, I would say, a good question. And in some regards, I took a decision probably in my early 30s that actually what I wanted to do was to improve the life of South Africans. And I'm not talking about the white Afrikaners and the white people, but I wanted to improve the lives of Black people in South Africa, because I felt that that was the type of contribution I wanted to make. And I absolutely have some evidence of that here, which we will come to. And I'm satisfied that, well, I'm maybe not satisfied, but I accept that in my 20s, my views were perhaps naive. But as life went on, I realized, no, we can improve the lives of people in South Africa, and I can demonstrate that that's exactly what I've done. And I don't want to take away from the evidence leaders, but we will come to that at some point in time. But you know, every person in their life realizes that no matter what you do in life, Sometimes your life isn't perfect. Sometimes what you do, you think, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I shouldn't have felt that way. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Or maybe I shouldn't have done that. But you can't change history, but you can change the future. And what I do with my life, certainly over the last 36 years, is I've tried to make South Africa a better country for all its people, especially the previously disadvantaged people. And in that regard, I can demonstrate that I spend a lot of my time and energy and my own personal money in doing that.
Honorable Chief Wibayo.
No, Chair, I wanted to say that the answer has not been adequate, but I'm prepared to live with what has been provided now. And during my tenure, I can expand on this issue so that I don't completely divert the proceedings as led by the evidence leaders. Thanks.
I'm sorry to do this to you, Chair, but also to put it on record that in his affidavit, paragraph 6, he says, I came from the UK to live in South Africa in 1989, because he was trying to create a different impression that he came here in 1995. He came to live here in 1989 and he had business interest here way before 1989. It is in his own affidavit.
Yeah, we will come to that. Just note it down, Mr. O'Sullivan, because.
Yes, Chairman, I didn't say.
No, don't respond. I'm
Okay.
just saying, note it down because we now have three dates. We have 1982, the year of the application of your handwritten letter and the letter of Mr. Watterson. There is 1989, there is 1995. Honorable Skosana.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to emphasize that as well. Hence, when we started, when the evidence leader was asking Mr. O'Sullivan that we agreed that we are disregarding that 1990 issue. Hence, the letter was read for us here that in 1982, he applied for a work permit and the work permit was rejected. And I just wanted to remind him quickly that you remember that, you know, your friend who was an MP, Mr. Watson, what you said just now is contrary to what when he made an application trying to help you to get a work permit in this country, for you to, in fact, a permanent resident, for you to settle permanent in South Africa, that he said that you are the most educated, intelligent, and a very conservative political attitude which you can add to white community in this country. Now, the letter was written to Director General Van der Merwe. Do you remember that?
Chairman, I think I've made it clear earlier during intense questioning by the evidence leader that I saw this letter for the very first time the other day.
Yes, but do you agree that the letter is legit?
The letter is what?
Is legit.
Legitimate.
Is legitimate.
It's an authentic document.
I'm not disputing it, but I cannot say anything about it because I never saw it before in my life.
So in other words, the context of that letter, do you have any problem with it? That you were an ex-serviceman club, that's where you met in the UK with Ms. Frank Martin?
When I saw the letter, I never recalled this fellow Watterson, never. When I saw the letter, I immediately raised it with Advocate Kise, and I said, oh, somebody showed me this, but I didn't have a copy of it to show her. And I said, oh, this is probably going to come up.
No, thank you, Chair. When our time comes, we will really transverse on these matters because really they are very important. You know, we can't be misled. And I mean, Mr. O'Sullivan knows exactly what we are talking about here. Since 1982, not 1997 or 1996 or 1990. Thank you.
Honorable Skosana, Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, he asked you whether you are happy with the the motivation that is made in that letter for you to get a permanent residence. There is a motivation there that you are educated, you are intelligent,
Yeah.
you are a conservative, and you are an ex-service officer. You can be very useful to the wide community of this country.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that motivation?
No, Chairman.
Okay. Honorable Ngola.
No, Chair, I was actually coming to the very same point that I find the evidence by the witness very much gravely contradictory. You would have made an example of the 1982 thingy, and amidst that, he completely lost his memory when asked and pressed on the issue of the citizenship. When pressed by the evidence leader, I then moved on and spoke about 1987 November. In paragraph 6 is 1989. Then when asked by Advocate Mkhize, it's now 1994 and 1995. So I think it suffices that we follow up that process we said we'll undergo, because if we take what has been accused before us, it's gravely contradictory, and it actually puts a particular image about the credibility of the witness in front of us. But I think we'll endure and try to get to the bottom of it. Thank you very much.
Chairman, I can respond immediately to that. I never said in my affidavit that I became a citizen in 1989. I applied for permanent residence. I only got my citizenship in 1995. And I probably didn't bother putting that in the affidavit, or I forgot to put it in the affidavit, but I can assure you I was a permanent resident. I never became a citizen in 1989. I never had a South African passport until 1995.
Chair, maybe let's take Mr. O'Sullivan on what he has written in his affidavit. The English here is very simple. In 1989, due to my investment in property, I successfully applied for permanent residence as a person of independent means. Successfully applied. That's what the English in your affidavit is saying.
For permanent residence. Not for citizenship, for permanent residence. There's a big difference between the two. When you get your ID book, Chairman, your last 3 digits in the ID book, if you're permanent resident, it's my ID number then ended in 185. It now ends in 085 because I'm a citizen.
Let's proceed. Kabazel,
Thank you, Chair.
you have shown us the patience of a mother.
I think I've just broken this.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd just like to confirm, and also just for the purposes of the record, that Mr. O'Sullivan on Sunday evening did contact me to say that there may be a letter which he did not have in his possession, which I did not have sight of, and certainly did not know the contents of the letter. But he did mention that there's a letter in circulation on social media, but we could not do anything about that letter until we got possession of it this morning. So I confirm that for the record, that you did contact me.
Yes, I contacted you because it made me realize, oh, there's something going on here. I've already done my affidavit. If I'd have recalled what happened 42 years ago, Chairman, I would have included it in my affidavit, but I never expected, but I immediately contacted the evidence leader and discussed it with her.
Okay, so Mr. O'Sullivan, we are now at page 20, at paragraph 21 of your affidavit.
Uh-huh.
Could you explain how you came to be appointed as the Group Executive Aviation Security at Airports Company South Africa, AXA, in early 2001?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was working in the border police, and at the same time I was working in the border police, I was a director of Tourism Johannesburg. And I was also a director of an entity which I had formed called Johannesburg's Big Five Tourist Destinations. And I was also a director of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. And the reason for that was I was involved in the tourist industry in what we call tourism plant. And I'm talking about hotels and properties with a tourist inclination on them. And while I was working at the airport in the border police, I had recognized some issues involving tourists that were getting victims of crime after arriving in the country and having issues outside the airport. So I sat with the tourism police unit that I was a member of, and I pulled our resources. I said, guys, we've got to do something to stop this nonsense. So what we started doing, we involved the permanent police members. We were a reservist unit of about 35 members, but there were permanent members at the airport as well, Chairman. And we involved them, and we sat down and we had a think tank. And we came up with the idea of swapping shifts and moving things around so that we could make the airport a safe environment. And that fitted in quite nicely with the other activities we were involved in, which was to prevent human trafficking. So what happened was we needed additional facilities because there were not some facilities that we needed. So I made representation to the general manager of the airport, a gentleman by the name of Bongani Maseko. And I said, Bongani, we need some additional facilities here. Can you help us? And he said, no, we'll have to have a meeting and what. So we had another meeting and they said, no, this is going to cost money. I'll have to get it approved by the board. And he asked me to come and do a presentation to the board of AXA as to why we wanted these changes at the airport. And the board approved the plan and we implemented those changes. And then about 3 or 4 months later, we were able to demonstrate that we'd taken crime down at the airport by 35% in 1 year. And then I was approached by the chairman of AXA, a gentleman by the name of Mashuda Romano. And he said to me he wanted to have a meeting with me and Dalla Oma. Now,
Is that Minister?
At the
Dalla
time,
Oma.
he was a minister of transport.
Okay, so if you could just maybe mention him in his official
Okay.
capacity.
Thank you. I knew Minister Oma from previous engagements with him because there had been some problems with, at that stage, he was a Minister of Justice. And while he was Minister of Justice, we'd had some problems with the policing at Johannesburg Central Police Station. There was some leakage with suspects, where suspects would come into the cells, beneath the magistrate's court, and they would have to go upstairs.
I'm sorry to interject, Mr. O'Sullivan, but I am now referring to your time at AXA.
Yes.
We've passed the time as a reservist
Sorry.
at
So then,
Worcester Square.
Mashuda Romano said to me that he wanted me to meet with Minister Dalla Oma. So, and he said the reason he wanted me to meet with him was he wanted me, they were going to create a position on the board of Airports Company South Africa. And that position would be Group Executive Aviation Security. And he had given an undertaking to Minister Oma that when he was appointed chairman of AXA, Minister Omer had asked him to ensure that if he made any new appointments at a senior level within AXA, that the appointments should not be white people. So he then introduced me to who I already knew, Minister Omer, and we had a coffee at the airport. And he explained to Minister Omer the things that we had been able to achieve with bringing down crime at the airport. And then both he and Minister Omer invited me to apply for a new position, which they were going to create, which was this position, Group Executive, Aviation Security.
Did you interview for the position?
Yes, Chairman, they published an article, what do you call it, an advertisement in the Sunday Times, and they told me I would have to apply for it, which I did. And I was shortlisted with 2 other persons, and then there was an interview, and they took a decision to appoint me.
At paragraph 22, you talk about the normal hiring process. Is that what you're referring to after you were invited to apply for this newly created role?
That's correct, Chairman.
Which coincidentally, you also were the successful candidate.
That's correct.
Okay. What was your mandate at AXA?
My mandate was,
Before Chair.
sorry,
There are 2 hands here, Honorable Skosana, Honorable Malem.
Thank you, Chair. It's very short. I wanted to find out the issue of parallel. What do you mean parallel? There was you were approached before the job was advertised, am I right?
they told me that they intended to create such a position and they would be placing an advertisement in the Sunday Times. And that when they place the advertisement in the Sunday Times, they would like me to apply for it because they liked the work that I had done at the airports with the
Yeah.
border police.
Yeah, if I hear you well, you said that they didn't want to appoint a white person, am I right? That's what you said earlier?
So, no, I didn't say they didn't want to appoint a white person. I said that when Mashida Romano was made the chairman of Airports Company, he had agreed with the Minister of Transport that he would not appoint a white person into any senior position
Yes.
on the board of AXA.
Right. Now, my last one on that, clarity on this parallel. When you said to the evidence leader, when she asked you about the parallelism of that advertisement, I didn't hear you well. What is parallel there on that? There was another candidate, or what was it?
Don't remember using the word parallel, but there were other candidates and there were interviews.
So it was a formality. The job was created for you.
No, Chairman, the job wasn't created for me. They had a panel of people that did the interview.
To disclose that the minister and the chairman, Ramashuda, approached you before that job was advertised.
My understanding is that they'd taken a decision to advertise the position, but they hadn't advertised it, and the advertisement was coming out either the next week or the week after. So
No, my question is, did you disclose during the interview that the minister, Tula Oma, and Ramano Mashudu, that they've approached you, that they are going to create a group executive for aviation and security at AXA?
yes, I did disclose it in the interview. In fact, the interview panel included the chairman.
The same person who asked you that you advertise that?
It's correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Malem.
No, Chair, thanks. When the advert was taken out for this position, what were the requirements in terms of qualifications?
I can't remember, Chairman. We're going back over a quarter of a century. I didn't keep a copy of the advertisement.
Do you have a degree? or equivalent yourself?
No, that wasn't a requirement.
Do you have a degree or an equivalent? You.
No,
So that post will not, Group Executive Aviation and Security will not have required a degree.
no, there was no degree required in the advertisement.
It was designed to suit you.
I don't agree with that. The advertisement came out the week after I had that meeting.
Who was in the panel? How many were they and who were they?
I think there were 4 or 5 directors of airports company, the chairman and 3 or 4 other directors.
Was there no one representing the minister at the panel?
Chairman, I can't remember. It's, I think 26 years ago or 25 years ago. But there were people sat there. There were directors of the airports company, and there was the chairman of the airports company. And I think the group executive HR was there.
Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, everything good about you, you remember it. For sure, you even remember the flight number you came with here. But if something is not of your favor or interest, all of a sudden we're told, yes, it's 26 years ago, it's 30 years ago. But you have detailed every achievement you have made. You remember everything that suits you, that is good about you. There is a panel, you're being interviewed for such a senior position. Was there no one there representing a minister?
Chairman, when I went in for the interview, I didn't ask, where are you from, where are you from, where are you from, where are you from? There were 4 or 5 people there. I can remember the name of Monsieur Romano. There was another gentleman who was a white person. He was a director of the airports company representing Aeroporti di Roma, who was a shareholder. And to my knowledge, there was somebody there, but I don't remember who was representing the other shareholder, which was the government of South Africa. And then there was the HR director. And that's it. I can't, you know, I mean.
Do you have any qualification or any practical experience that has to do with aviation?
I've been a pilot for 40 years and been a pilot for 40 years.
For 40 years?
Yes.
So you are a qualified pilot?
40 years.
I'm asking, are you qualified pilot?
I've been a qualified pilot for 40 years.
You went to school to be a pilot?
Yes. I own my own aircraft.
I live that. That I understand. But school, because those people of pilots go to school and then they have to do some hours. Have you done all of that?
I've done all of that.
And then you had security experience, because it's aviation and security.
I have that experience. I went on a course in the United States to learn specifically about aviation security, because I wanted to understand. There's an organization called ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. And they have a training center where they train people and they qualify them as aviation security specialists.
So will you be able to give us a certificate of that aviation security that you went to America for?
If I can,
and your pilot certificate?
Well, I can show you my pilot's license right now.
No, not license. School, the school. Where you attended school, obvious, when you finish, they give you a qualification. Will you attach it? Will we get it tomorrow?
If I can, what do you mean if tomorrow? If I can find it.
2 things, please try to find them. One of aviation security institution that you attended to in America, and the qualification, not license, because there is a certificate that you get, which will tell us where did you go and do your training, And then how many hours did you serve before you qualified to become a pilot?
Chairman, I wouldn't have any, I didn't fly to Cape Town with all these documents, knowing that I would be asked these type of questions from 40 years ago. The reality of the situation is, and there is my pilot's license. I have a pilot's license. I didn't buy it on the street corner. I did my training. I have my own aircraft. I fly my own aircraft on a regular basis. You know,
I wouldn't know if you bought it at your own street corner if you don't give me the qualification. The ticket doesn't say anything. When it comes to academic qualifications, that ticket you are showing me doesn't mean anything. I want certified documents that come from a recognizable institution that confirms that you went training to become a pilot and you passed the certain levels of the requirements, and the institution in America to check if that institution is recognizable institution and its qualification is recognizable. And we need both, even if it's not tomorrow, Chair. We need to, because here is a post, we're being told he can't remember what were the requirements. He doesn't have a degree or post-matric qualification. It says he went to aviation security to some institution and all of that. We need to see all of that, to see if indeed there was some element of qualification closer to this post that was specifically created for him.
Honorable Novalo.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I just want to confirm one or two things. So, Mr. O'Sullivan, you said you were approached by Ramano and Mr. Dula Oma, correct?
no, I didn't say that. I said I was approached by Mr. Romano, who wanted a meeting,
Ramano and
who wanted a meeting with the
Yes.
minister. And
So
he
they
arranged a
said
meeting, and then I met them.
Bonani says they are not related.
No, I know he's not talking about the Ramano we have here. But what I want to check is, so then they persuaded you to apply, correct? They said you must consider
They invited me to apply.
to apply.
Yes.
And then were you vetted before you were
Pardon me?
considered for the job? Were you vetted?
I don't know what their internal mechanisms were, but I'm assuming they carried out the normally.
No, my question, I think, should start like this. The first job that you did was being a detective at the airport, which was a national key point, correct?
Correct.
The airport was the national key point. What was your responsibility
Worked in the border police there.
as a police?
Yes.
Were you vetted?
No.
So you worked as a police at the airport, which was a national key point, without being vetted.
They may have vetted me. I don't know, but I was a reservist.
So you had no a clearance certificate.
My knowledge, not.
Okay, no, thank you, Chair.
Honorable James, you will be the last and we. proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I'll save my questions for later, but I just need clarity. In 1997, when you got this paid job, was it as the group executive or was it at border control management?
I didn't hear what job?
The job when you started, you said earlier on in 1997 was your paid job at the airport.
Oh,
You were dealing with drug-related trafficking and working at border control. I'm trying to understand, was it a paid job via SAPS or was it this group executive job?
then no, Chair. I was a police reservist.
You were police reservist,
I was a police reservist at the airport.
working at border control.
Border police, not border control.
Border police.
Border control was carried out by the immigration department.
So you were police reservist responsible for drug trafficking.
No, Chairman, I wasn't a police service responsible for drug trafficking. I was a police reservist in the border police. And we were involved in a lot of activities, which included human trafficking, drug
He's saying,
prevention. It was crime prevention.
okay, I'm gonna leave it for later. And then also, just to make 100% certain, you have no other qualifications, nothing. You don't have any law qualifications, engineering, nothing,
No, completely unqualified.
completely. Nothing in law, nothing in engineering.
That's correct.
I'll get back to this later. Matric, do you have a matric?
We don't have matric where I went to school. That's a South African qualification.
Anything equivalent to a matric?
Of course I have.
What is that?
We call it O levels and A levels, but I mean, we're talking about 40 years ago, or 50 years
You
ago.
were group executive. No qualifications.
Of course, I had qualifications. With all respect, Chairman, you know, being an engineer doesn't fit in with group executive aviation point. A aviation security auditor. I was a person that carried out aviation security audits. So I had all that training and all those skills.
I'm going to leave it at that, Mr. O'Sullivan. You must remember what you told this committee now when I come back later. And this is why it was very important for you to have a CV as part of your statement. Then we wouldn't have been having this.
How was it?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. O'Sullivan, just for purposes of my clarity, you've just testified that you have no degree.
That's correct.
Okay. Earlier, you testified that you have an electrical engineering degree.
No, I never said I had a degree. I had a high national certificate, which is just one step below the degree.
So you do have a post O levels qualification.
Absolutely, yes.
And what is that qualification?
Engineering, electronic engineering.
Electronic engineering.
It's a high national certificate.
Where did you obtain it?
Manchester,
Manchester Technikon.
correct.
Okay. So electrical, Manchester Technikon. Electrical, it's called electrical engineering.
Electrical and electronic engineering,
Okay, and that is your post O and A level qualification.
correct.
Okay. We were at paragraph 23 of your statement. And there it reads, I had carte blanche to make radical changes and to review all security contracts in place. My question that I had posed to you was, what was your mandate at AXA and what did your initial assessment reveal regarding the security? Perhaps let me take it one step at a time. What was your mandate at AXA?
My mandate at AXA, Chairman, was to improve security, not just at Johannesburg Airport, but at all the airports.
And what did your initial assessment, once you joined, what did that reveal regarding security at all the airports in South Africa?
My initial assessment, Chair, revealed that the security wasn't up to the standard it should be, and that there was corruption within the service provider environment. For example, bribes were being paid to AXA employees to sign worksheets to say that people had performed certain jobs that hadn't been performed, and equipment tenders were going out in a corrupt fashion. I assessed all of this. I then went to speak to the chairman. I explained to the chairman that we had these problems. He said we need to fix it, and that was what we did. We went about to fix it.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by having carte blanche to make radical changes?
Okay, so for example, they had just completed a tender before I joined for the replacement of all the archway metal detectors and the pre-flight screening equipment of passengers. Where you put your bag on a conveyor belt, it passes through. At the other end, they can have a picture and see what's in your bag. And the replacement of all that equipment at 10 airports, I can't remember the exact figure now, but it was millions of rand. And when I joined, in the first month I was there, I was brought the tender documents and told we need to place this order now. And you have to sign this that we're going to buy all this equipment. So I said, okay, let me have a look at all that. And I asked some questions. And I had a problem because the lowest bidder wasn't the contractor that they planned to issue the contract to. And there was a difference of several million rand. So I then decided to look into that further. And I phoned the lowest bidder. And I asked him, you tendered for this equipment, but they've disqualified you from receiving the contract because your equipment doesn't do exactly what the specification says. And the tenderer told me, he said, no, our equipment can't do that because the specification has been written for the winning tender's bidded equipment. In other words, it would appear that the winning tender contractor had assisted AXA to write the specification because it would suit the equipment that he would have been supplying. And when I saw this, I went and had another look at the document, the specification. And then I started doing a comparison between all the tenders who submitted a tender. And I found out that, in fact, only one person could have won that tender, and that was the highest price tender. So I went back to Mashuda Romano and I said, we have a problem here. My suggestion would be that we retender, and instead of tendering exactly what the equipment should be, we should retender on the basis of what the equipment should be able to do. In other words, it should comply with these relevant international standards, and it should be guaranteed, and it shouldn't break down, and blah, blah, blah. And he agreed with that. So we retendered, and I think we saved some in the region of 5 or 6 million rand on that tender. And the same applied to the manpower contract. We had 10 airports, and for some reason, all of the security employees for the 10 airports were from one contractor. And when I analyzed the scope of the tender and the work that was being performed, I found discrepancies. And the discrepancies I found was, I would go there, for example, out of hours, not during normal working hours. I would go there outside normal working hours. And we had the tender documents, so we knew how many security personnel we should expect to find at each security checkpoint in the airport. And when I went to validate how many people were there, every time I went there, I found that there were people missing, which meant they were the contractors who had won the contract were doing what they call short posting. So you might have a security checkpoint where there's supposed to be 5 people on duty, and there were only 2 people on duty. But the airports company was paying for 5 people to be there. So over a period of, I think, 2 months or 3 months, I think we sent 22 breach letters, or 21 or 22 breach letters to the contractor. And the breach letter stipulated what the tender said, what the contract said, and it said, by the way, on this date at this time, we found the following, and we listed the defects in the supply. Then what we did, we carried out an audit of the personnel that they had employed. And the specification stated that the workforce had to consist of a certain grade of security officer. You have what they call grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D, grade E, like this. And at certain positions, the person would have to be a grade C. At certain position, it would have to be a grade B. At another position, it would be acceptable to have a grade D. And when we did an audit of the security staff that they had, not only did we find people missing from their posts, and they weren't missing because they'd gone away, they were missing because they'd never been there in the first place. And then we found that their qualifications were not in keeping, and some of them were not even registered as security guards at all.
Okay. To that end, you actually, in your affidavit at paragraph 23 and 24, mention a specific contract and contractor as an example.
That's correct, Chairman. A company called Kusalani Security and Risk Management.
How did you deal with that contract?
This is the company that supplied approximately 5,000 heads around the 10 airports. And we issued them with 2021 breach letters. And the breach letters we kept issuing more or less every 2 or 3 days. There was a breach letter being issued. So I was really getting on top of these people. And then I happened to be in the United States when 911 took place. And I was shocked at what could happen if aviation security didn't go according to plan. So when I came back, I met with the chairman and I said, look here, I think what we don't need in South Africa right now is a 911 or something of that equivalent. We need to get rid of this contractor, and instead of having one contractor doing all the airports, my suggestion is that we have a different contractor at every airport so we don't have all our eggs in one basket. The chairman agreed, and then we started a process to cancel the contract and to bring in new contractors.
Okay, following the cancellation of the Kusalani contract, you opened a criminal docket.
Correct.
What did the investigation uncover regarding payments to senior? Why did you open a criminal docket?
We opened the criminal docket because, Chairman, I invited the contractor to supply us with proof of their VAT registration and proof of their VAT payments, and they refused to supply it. So I opened the criminal docket not only for that, but some of the employees of the contractor had come to me privately and told us that their employer was deducting UIF, pension contributions, and when they asked for a certificate to show that their pensions had been paid up, they could not provide such a certificate. So I opened the docket alleging fraud in respect of VAT, UIF, and pension contributions. And the investigation resulted in the CEO of the company going on trial, and he ended up getting 5 years in prison.
We are at paragraph 25 of your statement. What did this investigation for which you opened dockets uncover regarding the payments to senior AXA employees?
Okay, so Chairman, we found that within the security environment, the security department of Airports Company, we found 1 or 2 people that approached me, and they said to me, listen, you know, I even took sworn statements from them because they said on such and such a date, they were given an envelope which they had to pass on to this person, and so on and so forth. So I went to the chairman, Mashudu. I said, Mashudu, we have a problem here. We need to get into this. He authorized us to appoint an outside company to come in and do an investigation. And that company, we pointed them in the right direction. That company provided evidence of bribes that were being paid to AXA employees to sign off worksheets that people had been at work when they hadn't been at work, what we call ghost employees. And the bribes had been paid. So all those people ended up getting suspended and then dismissed. In those days, Chairman, Act 12 of 2004, which is the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, didn't exist. It had only been promulgated in 2004. So we just dismissed them based on the fact that they were dishonest.
In the same vein that you speak about what the investigations uncovered, You also mentioned the late National Commissioner, Police Commissioner, Mr. Jackie Silebi.
Yes.
Could you expand on why you mentioned him particularly at this paragraph?
Yes. So, Chairman, I mentioned Jackie Salebi because after we took a decision to cancel the contract, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and Mashuda Romano. And then what Mashuda Romano did was he called an urgent executive board meeting where the whole executive group of AXA endorsed our decision before we issued the cancellation letter. After we issued the cancellation letter, strange things started happening. The first thing that happened was I got a phone call from the then Deputy National Commissioner of Police, a gentleman by the name of Andre Price. And he wanted an urgent meeting between myself and Jackie Salebi and himself at the airport. And the purpose of that meeting was to inform me that the National Key Points Act was going to be changed. And the change to the National Key Points Act would result in national key points no longer falling under the army, but they would fall under the police. And therefore, they did not want me to cancel any contracts until they had changed the National Key Points Act. And when we discussed that internally in AXA, we considered that request to be unlawful. We asked for it to be put in writing. It was put in writing, and then we still took a decision to cancel the contract because they were asking for us not to cancel the contract, yet the contractor was in constant breach. He wasn't able. To give you an example, Chairman.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I'm sorry to interrupt
Yep.
you. We're just running behind with time. My question was quite specific, and it had to do with the late National Commissioner.
Yeah.
Could you just expand specifically on what you uncovered in the investigation in relation to him?
So, Chairman, what I uncovered was that he was a friend of the CEO of Kusalani Security, a very close friend. And I didn't obtain any prima facie evidence at that stage, but I had received information that he was also a friend of the head of the security at the airport, and that together they were looking after the contractor, who in turn was looking after them. So after we issued the cancellation letter, strange things started happening. The first incident that took place was that somebody tried to shoot me. And I had a bullet hole in my car. In fact, I had a small chunk out of my thigh. The bullet actually singed my thigh and smashed the window and went through the door. And the same night, Mashuda Romano had a house in Northcliffe. And the same night, he was out at a function, and two guys arrived in a motor vehicle without number plates. And they tried to go into his property, but his bodyguards were there, and a shootout took place with the bodyguards. And then I said to Mashudu, I don't think you should stay at home until we get this contract dealt with and out of the way. Oh, I should mention 2 days or 3 days before that, Kusalani Security had launched an urgent application in the High Court to prevent the, to interdict the cancellation. And in that application, they also indicated that they had been informed by the Commissioner of Police that the police would be taking over the security management of the national key points. And the national key points, we had 10 airports, but then only 3 of them were national key points. And I had become the national key points officer for the owner of the national key points, which was AXA. So,
Mr. O'Sullivan, do you have a copy in these documents? We don't have a copy of that court order.
so unfortunately, Chair, I tried to get a copy of that court order, and I think I phoned the attorneys, I think either in your presence or advocate presence, and they said that they would look for it, but it's like 25 years ago.
Do you remember what the outcome of the order was?
The order was that their urgent application was dismissed with costs and the contract was cancelled.
I have here an article from a newspaper from 23 years ago. Airport security boss faces VAT fraud. What it says is that the Kusalani Security settled with the airport and its contract ran its course, but it was not renewed. What is your comment to that?
No, the contract was cancelled. In fact, we brought in a number of other companies. And to my memory, one of the companies was Fidelity. There was another company called Protea Security. And I still remember somebody accusing me of being a shareholder of Protea Security, which at the time was owned by Tokyo Sequali Velapanda Group. And we replaced Kusalani completely and they were gone from the airports.
Okay. I would like to then bring you back to my question before we went down the road of talking about the cancellation of the contract. It's still unclear how the late former national commissioner features in this specific contract. But to that end, I can take you to paragraph 26 of your statement.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Before paragraph 26.
Yes.
You mentioned that he was one of the people that where you conducted an investigation and you found that he'd been somewhat involved with Kusalani.
Correct.
At paragraph 26, you then mentioned that whilst Mr. Mashudu Ramano was in hiding during October 2001, which is the incident that you've just described, that there was a shootout outside of his house.
Sorry,
Officials.
Chair,
Yes.
that's not correct. The shootouts had taken place before then. And then he was in hiding.
Yes.
So
That's what I'm intimating,
Yes,
that
okay.
whilst he was in hiding after the shootout.
after the shootout.
Yes.
Yes.
Whilst he was in hiding after the shootout, during October 2001, police officials reporting to Silebi tracked Romano to the hotel he was staying at. Could you expand on that statement?
Yes, Chairman. He was arrested and detained as allegedly being an illegal immigrant. And on the day he was arrested, I didn't know he'd been arrested. In the afternoon, I think in those days, the Mail and Guardian used to come out on a Friday or Thursday. I can't remember exactly what day it is. But on the day in question, I got a phone call from a journalist at the Mail and Guardian who told me, by the way, you know, we're going to ask you some questions. We're running a story tomorrow. And I said, okay, what are the questions? He said, well, first of all, do you know that your chairman is an illegal immigrant? And I said, no, he can't possibly be an illegal immigrant. I know his family because after I became friends with him, which we did, I had flown to his mother's funeral. In fact, I flew him up in my plane to his mother's funeral in Thohoyandou. So I knew that he wasn't an illegal immigrant. But what had happened was, unfortunately, his ID book, his name was spelled wrong. His ID book was spelled Ramango instead of Romano. And he explained that to me as being because when he was born, his mother went to the police station to register his birth. And she gave the name, and the policeman who wrote down the name wrote down Ramango instead of Romano. So, but he knew that he was a Romano, not a Ramango. So after that, he had to rectify. But in the meantime, This reporter then accused me of being a shareholder of Protea Security or being a shareholder of Mvelapanda. And I said, no, that's rubbish. He said, I've got your bank statements here. Your bank statement shows that you received R500,000 last week or the week before.
Did you receive R500,000 from
Yeah, I just-
Velapande?
No, not from, I'd sold some shares.
Okay.
So.
To Velapande?
No, I had nothing to do with Velapande. I'd sold some unit trusts, in fact, shares. I'd sold some unit trusts. So, you know, you buy and sell and, you know, that's how it works. So I had nothing to do with Velapande at all. And so I said this to the journalist. And the next day, there was a headline in the Mail and Guardian that Mashuda Romano was arrested and detained for being a legal immigrant. And by the way, in the morning, I got a phone call from Mashudu. He said, they've just released me.
This is about 23 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. That was 2001.
Yes, about
25
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, 24 years ago, because it was, I think, October 2001.
Okay.
And he said, they've just released me. And I said, thank God, I've been trying to get hold of you. I said, thank God, I've been trying to get hold of you. What happened? And then he gave me this explanation that I've just given you now about the Romango, the Romano, and so on and so forth.
Your role at this point, you'd been now at EXA for a couple of months. How involved was your role? I mean, you started, you've testified that you basically did an audit of all the contracts and you found that there were irregularities. You canceled a number of the contracts.
So it was one big contract.
But you mentioned a number of others that were also
That
quite.
was equipment then.
Yeah.
That wasn't a contract, that was a tender.
Okay. My question, Mr. O'Sullivan, is basically leading to your role. How involved was your role at EXA? How much time did you require in order to execute all the things that you were doing?
Well, I hit the ground running and I spent literally 7 days a week there doing this. And unfortunately, the airports regrettably were in a mess. If I had to tell you, in the first 4 months of my being at Airports Company, we had multiple robberies, including airside robberies, where bandits came into the airport and held up people that were unloading cash and diamonds from a KLM flight. $26 million was stolen from a Swiss Air flight. And this was causing chaos because the people in the outside world were starting to say, well, hang on a minute. Look at all these heists going on at the airport. And of course, unfortunately, they were all happening at Joburg Airport.
And this was during your role specifically at EXA as head of security. And at paragraph 29 of your statement, you say that by 2001, although I was a senior executive at EXA, I still maintained my role as a reservist at the Border Police as the work was complementary. You've just testified that your role was 7 days a week and it was very involved. You hit the ground running. How did you manage to balance your role as an executive at EXA and still provide volunteer work as a reservist at the Border Police?
Well, probably that's easy to explain because my Border Police work was at Johannesburg Airport. And 99%, so we kept records of where the security incidents took place over the 10 airports. And 99% of all the security incidents were taking place at Johannesburg Airport. So I knew that if I could fix Johannesburg Airport, I would fix the problems at all the airports. And I suppose you can say this. In fact, I've used the expression, the work was complementary. So being a police reservist, I'm wearing 2 hats now because I'm also seeing through 2 sets of eyes. I'm seeing what I would see as a policeman, I'm also seeing now as a security specialist. And I'm now starting to say, aha, one way to solve this problem is we put security controls in on these doors with card readers. And now people won't be able to open and close those doors without having proper identity systems in place. So it complemented itself like that.
Honorable Skosana.
Chair, thank you. Mr. Oliver, I just want you to clear this up. Earlier, you said that you were appointed as well because 3 airports were national key points, am I right?
Correct.
And you are now a national key point official
Correct.
without being vetted.
Well, I think at that stage, they didn't require vetting. It only came later.
National key point.
Yes, at that time, National Key Points Act did not require the people to be vetted.
And anyway, I won't be surprised, I'll just make a comment on that. I mean, you had any qualification, formal education when you were appointed as a group executive, am I right?
Well, there were no qualifications in the field of aviation security other than the ICAO certificate, which I had.
Yeah, no, because it's a clarity question, I'll ask you tomorrow. What I'm saying is, remember, we agreed earlier that the post was advertised. That's what you said.
Correct.
And the requirements, you don't remember what were the requirements?
26 years ago, there was an advertisement. A person had to be competent at the job and had to demonstrate a proven knowledge of aviation security. I can't remember what else.
Yeah, it's fine, because remember that they recruited you from property development and tourism company. You had no experience of that. And as well,
No,
earlier,
sorry, just.
you had no experience of security.
Yes, I had experience of security.
That forensic security you're talking about, your company.
Pardon?
Your company. The experience was from your company.
Airports company, you mean?
No. I'm saying the experience you had, was it from your own company?
Chairman, I had worked as a country manager for Chubb Security.
Yes, I'm aware. It says so, yes. Yeah, and you were running your property development company and the tourism company
Well,
at the same time.
the tourism company's chairman were non-executive positions.
Yes.
I wasn't running those companies. They would have had executives that ran those companies. I had a non-executive position where I was invited to contribute because of my knowledge in the tourism industry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We are talking more about this. What I'm saying to you, what I want to put it to you, when I want a clarity on this one. Remember, you said to us that some of your people you trained, the 1,500 people, some went to PAL, college or what? Am I right?
No, I went to PAL.
Only you.
It might have been some of the others who went there, but they did their training in Johannesburg.
Yeah, but at the later stage, I wanted that only for you to say to us that the each which is asking you now, I think on paragraph 29, where you said you put up 70 hours and 80 hours at border policing, between boat roles, it doesn't make sense.
Why not?
You said there were 13 airports, am I right?
No, 10 airports.
10 airports, yes. The 3 were. And now you were able to run that as well and the border.
I worked 70 to 80 hours a week. By the way, still do.
When?
Okay, honorable member, let's proceed.
Okay, it's fine. We'll see tomorrow, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Malema.
Thanks, Chair. The evidence leader is leaving a very important point. She tried to ask you about Jegis levy in relation to the cancellation of that big contract. And you have not said anything except that funny things started happening to you, and policemen that are reporting to him, I would imagine, it's a national commissioner of police report to him, went to arrest Ramano, and they said, no, he's an illegal foreign. So I don't know, I don't see, where does Jegis levy get in relation to this cancellation of this contract?
Okay, I'll repeat what I said earlier, Chairman, which is that Jackie Salebi attended a meeting which had been arranged by Andre Praetz, who at the time was the Deputy National Commissioner, for operations. And the purpose of the meeting was to inform AXA that this is after we sent a letter of cancellation to Kusalani Security. It was like 3 days later. The purpose of the meeting was to inform us that he, Jackie Celebi, was going to arrange for the cabinet to take a decision to move the National Key Points Act responsibility from army to police. And because of that, he wanted a situation where the current incumbent, namely Kusalani Security, would not be fired, but they would still be in place. Their contract would not be terminated. So as a result of that, as I said earlier, we had a meeting internally in AXA, and a decision was taken that we could not accede to that request for a number of reasons, and the main reason being that they were undersupplying on the posts, they were committing fraud, they were committing corruption, and they were leaving gates open, and they were allowing major security issues to take place.
No,
at the
I
airport.
understand that. I want to know, did Jackie Levy say with his mouth, do not cancel a Kusalani security contract in
Yes.
that meeting?
Yes.
What evidence do we have about that?
It was a meeting, I didn't record it. I
The
didn't.
minutes,
Pardon?
are the minutes of that meeting?
There were letters sent. I mean, 25 years ago, I don't have those letters now.
No, not letters. In
No,
the
there were
meeting.
letters sent confirming what he had said and confirming that AXA had taken a decision to go ahead and cancel the contract anyway.
And then the last question from me, you never had a vetting certificate to be such a senior person dealing with aviation security at a national key point.
There was no legal requirement for a vetting certificate at that time.
That's fine, but you never had a
I
vetting.
never had one because there was no legal requirement for one.
No, that's fine, whether legal requirement or not, you never had a vetting.
As I said,
You were never vetted in your entire life.
as I said, I never had a vetting because there was no legal requirement.
Okay. Okay. Can we
So,
proceed?
thank you,
Kabasa.
Chairperson. We are at paragraph 33 of your statement. You say that subsequently your contract was terminated from AXA. What was the reason for the termination of your contract?
Because Jackie Celebi had intimated, well, he had gone to NICOC or NICOC, I don't know how you say it, and they had changed the rules, and anybody that sat on the National Aviation Security Committee would have to have a security clearance of secret. And I would not be able to get such a security clearance because I had dual nationalities. So I could no longer sit on the National Aviation Security Committee. And as a result of no longer being able to sit on the National Aviation Security Committee, and as a result of the representations that Mr. Celebi made to the new CEO of AXA, a decision was taken, not by the chairman. The chairman tried to stop the decision from being taken, but he was now non-executive because we had a CEO now. A decision was taken to give me 3 months' notice and terminate my position.
So you were terminated, your contract was terminated because you did not have security clearance.
Yes, and
Okay.
because Jackie Celebi had had secret meetings with the new CEO and agreed, they looked at my contract, she got a lawyer involved, and the lawyer advised her that there's a clause in his contract that says you can give him 3 months' notice, and that's what happened.
But it was, the reason was due to you not having security clearance.
Correct.
Okay, we can move on. After leaving AXA, how did your understanding of Mr. Celebi's corrupt relationship with Mr. Glenn Agliotti develop?
So whilst we were in the border police, this is before I joined AXA. So I remember an incident, it must have been
Just specifically the relationship between Mr. Silebi and
That's what I'm talking about.
Glenn Agliotti, if we can
Yes.
just limit
So
it to that.
While I was in the border police, we had a consignment of counterfeit goods that came in, and the consignment of counterfeit goods was being brought in by Glenn Agliotti.
If you could be specific about what those counterfeit goods were?
They were, I call them tackies, but they're running shoes. Converse was the manufacturer's name, but they were counterfeit. They were not real Converse, and they were polo shirts, golf shirts. And they were listed on the waybill as being secondhand clothing for charitable distribution to previously disadvantaged communities. But when the container was opened, it was found to be brand new Converse shoes and polo shirts, which were allegedly secondhand clothing from China.
Okay. Besides the clothing, was there any involvement of narcotics, drugs, along the lines of the things that you were specifically looking after at the airport, which you have mentioned?
No.
No.
No. Later, I found out about that, but that would have been a few years later.
Okay. So you were still describing the relationship and how you uncovered it.
Yes, so what happened was, after my role at AXA had been terminated, I became aware of the fact, in fact, I became aware of the fact before my role was terminated. I laid a formal complaint with what was then called the ICD, which was, ICD stood for the Independent Complaints Directorate. And I laid a formal complaint with the ICD whilst I was still working at AXA against Jackie Silebi for interfering in the contractual relationships between AXA and the contractor. And when the new CEO started, I was called in and told I must withdraw that complaint.
Did you withdraw it?
No, I refused to withdraw the complaint. And the reason I refused to withdraw the complaint was because I believed the complaint was valid. And I was then unlawfully suspended.
But at this point, Mr. O'Sullivan, with all due respect, you've now been terminated. Your contract has been terminated.
Before I was terminated, I was unlawfully suspended.
Okay, but we are now at the point, I'm sorry to interject. I don't mean to rush you. It's just time is not on our side. In the timeline of where we are in the testimony, you have left AXA and you are now investigating Mr. Silebi, even though you've left AXA. And that's where we are in the testimony. If you could just expand on that.
Okay, so Chairman, after I left AXA, I went back and carried on with my property developments. Actually, I was still involved with that anyway. I started building houses for sale again. This developed, I think, 2 developments in Bedford View, and I built some houses in Kempton Park and some others in Dainfern. But while I was doing all that, I decided to look into Jackie Silebi because I was aware, I had no evidence, but I was aware of this relationship between him and Nolan Grenier.
Him and?
Nolan Grenier.
Okay.
He was the CEO of Kusalani Security. And I considered that a corrupt relationship. So I arranged a meeting with, I'd made this complaint with ICD, first of all. Secondly, after leaving AXA, I lodged a formal complaint with what was then called the Scorpions. I had a meeting with the Scorpions in Silverton, in Pretoria, and I provided them with all the information that I had. And they told me, yeah, it doesn't look good, but there's no prima facie evidence there. If you find any evidence, come back and tell us, and we'll have another look. So I decided to go out and look for evidence. And I got that evidence. And the first evidence I got was I got a phone call from a captain in the police at Sandton Police Station And he told me that there'd been a robbery at a house, like a townhouse, you know, a luxury townhouse in School Road in Morningside. And that the person that had been robbed, his next door neighbor, was a guy called Glenn Agliotti. And when this captain went there, he went into the next door neighbor's house, which was Glenn Agliotti's house, because the house where the robbery had taken place was being treated as a crime scene. So the captain went into that house and he met with this person. And then while he was talking to this person and taking a sworn statement from him, Glenn Agliotti was talking to somebody on the phone and he handed this captain the phone. He said, "Here, it's the Commissioner of Police. He wants to speak to you." And the captain in question spoke on the phone with the Commissioner of Police, which was Jackie Celebi. And Jackie Celebi told him, and that's what he put into a sworn statement.
What was the name of the captain?
Sure. I can't remember.
Do we have any supporting evidence
Yes,
to
I don't
that
have it, but
effect?
it's on the docket.
Okay.
So the Scorpions obviously ran with the investigation because it wasn't just that. There were a number of things that came together. So we had, first of all, that situation.
And that's what you uncovered basically in your investigation, that he was
That was the
involved
first thing.
with
That was the
Agliotti.
first thing.
Okay.
So what Jackie Celebi told the captain was, look after this fellow Glenn Agliotti. He's a close personal friend of mine. I then remembered that several years earlier, when I was in the Border Police before joining AXA, that we'd had this consignment of clothing, this
What you described earlier.
yes, the counterfeit goods. And we had detained the goods and I'd arrested Glenn Agliotti. And you then leave it. And the next thing
You had arrested him as a reservist? I'm just
yes,
in that capacity. Okay.
yes.
Okay, can we?
And I
Honorable Nomvalo.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. No, Mr. O'Sullivan, may you please extricate me from this confusion? Earlier, when I asked you about security clearance, you confirmed that you did not have it. And then when the council asked you
leave that cup.
about your dismissal, you said, should I wait for you? Can I proceed?
Thank you.
When the council asked you about your dismissal, and then you confirmed that you were dismissed by Jackie Celebi, by Mr. Jackie Celebi, because you had no security clearance. And the justification, according to your logic, for not having a clearance, a security clearance, is that there was no legal requirement at the time. Is that correct?
So almost correct.
Yeah. Now, what precipitates my confusion here is that I find it very ironic that Mr. Celebi can dismiss you on the basis of a requirement which is not prescribed by the law.
So Chairman, I can explain that. First of all, Jackie Celebi didn't dismiss me.
No, terminated your contract.
He didn't terminate my contract. My contract wasn't a contract with the police. My
Yes.
contract was a contract with Airports Company South Africa. And what happened was Jackie Celebi first attempted to have the National Key Points Act changed so that the National Key Points would report to the police. And the next thing he did, he went to NICOC, and he got them to change the regulations so that everybody that sat on the National Aviation Security Committee would have to have security clearance. So they brought in a new regulation. And I couldn't meet that regulation because I didn't have security clearance.
So it became a requirement
It became a requirement
at a
after-
later stage.
Yes, after I was.
So at the time when you were appointed, it was not a requirement.
Correct.
That is your logic.
That's a fact.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
I want us to take a break, Kawazela, at what time?
I think this part is almost done. So I think we should be done by past to take a break.
Okay.
Mr. O'Sullivan, if I can just then maybe just to wrap up this part of your evidence, you say that, I'll just read it into the record. Under Celebi, this is at paragraph 37. Under Celebi, the police was effectively captured by the criminal underworld. I'll give you an opportunity to just give your final comment. With many criminals having friends in the police, to keep them out of prison. The growing trail of evidence and media exposés were starting to take their toll on the relationship between Celebi and President Thabo Mbeki. This is very similar to what has been testified regarding the events that led up to the 6th of July. The narrative is quite similar. However, in 2006 and 2007, President Thabo Mbeki tried to help Celebi in the return of securing his own political future in Polokwane. And it goes on, it can be read into the record. The question that I have specifically in relation to that paragraph, just to be, for the sake of completion, you then go on to say that prior to December 2007, there was a coordinated effort by President Mbeki and an overseas-based agent, Mr. Andre Pienaar, to save Celebi on the one hand, yet arrest and charge Zuma on the other hand. They failed. President Mbeki and Pienaar's plans fell apart at the ANC elective conference in Polokwane. And you complete your paragraph by stating that the disbanding of Scorpions was intended to curtail high-profile corruption investigations, particularly with regard to those near and dear to the senior politicians. My question for you in respect of that paragraph 37, it's quite convoluted and a lot can be said about that paragraph, is how did your in your view, what was the impact of Mr. Celebi's tenure as commissioner on the integrity of police and services?
Chairman, I became aware of appointments that were being made in the police of individuals being promoted into positions that they weren't suitable for. For example, Richard Mdluli was made the national head of crime intelligence. There were other appointments. I can't remember the names of the people now, but people were being appointed that weren't qualified. And I think it became apparent that from the evidence and the statements I took, that these things were happening because we had a corrupt chief of police. So I intensified I didn't believe that South Africa would benefit from having a corrupt chief of police. And I also didn't believe it would be in the interest of South Africa to have a corrupt police chief allowed to continue in return for arresting and charging a person that had aspirations to become the president of the country. For example, Jacob Zuma. And I felt that this kind of activity cried out for intervention. So I stepped up my investigations, and the rest is history. I managed to get sworn statements from witnesses linking Glenn Agliotti to drug trafficking, linking Glenn Agliotti to counterfeit cigarette importation from Zimbabwe, and linking Glenn Agliotti to payments being made to Jackie Celebi.
How did you specifically uncover the drug trafficking that Agliotti was involved with? Could you expand?
Sorry, Chair, before that. On a point of correction, Richard Mdluli came head of crime intelligence under President Zuma and Nathi Mthethwa, not under President Mbeki.
Sorry, Chairman, Richard Glooly was appointed not National Head of Crime Intelligence. Thank you for assisting me there. He was appointed Provincial Head of Crime Intelligence in Gauteng by Jackie Salebi. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
Just for the purposes of the committee, at page 74 of the annexures, it's B74, you have enclosed a report which details the specific persons that you say were involved in the various criminal activities. However, my question to you at this stage is, you say that you uncovered drugs, drug trafficking.
Correct.
In the timeline where we are, you have left your role as head of security at AXA. You are now back in business and also doing reservist work.
No,
How? Yes.
I
Okay.
was no longer reservist, Chair,
Okay.
because Jackie Salebi terminated my role as a police reservist. And he inspired the need to terminate my role as head of aviation security. So I had no police work after that.
What were you doing at the time?
Property development.
What, you say that you were investigating various things. Why were you investigating as a property developer?
Because I wanted to live in a country where there was a rule of law. I wanted to live in a country where a person who did his job well wouldn't be fired because somebody wants to commit the offense of corruption without being caught. I wanted to live in a country where security contracts were not given to the person that paid the highest bribe, but they were given to the company best suited to provide the service. And that would make the airport safe. I didn't want to live in a country where something tragic should happen, for example, like 911. I didn't want to live in a country where you could go to the police station to open a case and the criminal that committed the offense would get away with it because he paid a bribe to the police. I realized by 2003 that we were on a slippery slope, and the best way to get off that slippery slope was to bring back some ethics into the police.
Yeah. You were at the point, I actually derailed you by asking a different question, but you were about to explain what you uncovered, how you uncovered. It's not necessarily specifically about Glenn Agliotti, but it's more about your investigative work into drug trafficking. And you were about to expand on how you managed to uncover drug trafficking, which Glenn Agliotti had been involved in.
Yes, Chairman, obviously you get somebody phones you, gives you information. I think it became common knowledge that I was looking into Jackie Salebi. And you sniff around and you get information, but you can't prove anything. But somebody gave me a tip-off that actually, if you want information, this fellow Glenn Agliotti is involved in drug trafficking, and this is how he does it. But I had no evidence. So I decided to go and get that evidence. And I was given the name of the company and the name of the person that managed the company that imported the narcotics and distributed the narcotics. So once I had that information, I then realized, well, hang on a minute. I can go to that company and see if they can provide evidence. So I arranged a meeting. It just coincidentally happened.
It sounds like you stumbled upon that
Yes.
evidence, but in
Yes.
fact, you were investigating the former commissioner.
Correct.
Okay.
So it just so happened that when I was a police reservist, I had been running a drug-free schools project in my spare time. And that drug-free schools project resulted in us, a team of us, going around all the schools and explaining to the children how drugs are bad for you.
When did you start that project?
That would have been the mid-90s.
whilst you were a reservist.
Correct.
Okay.
And one of the schools I went to was Houghton Primary School. We went to a lot of schools. We felt it was important not just to focus on high schools, but to also focus on primary schools, because primary school leavers become high school students. And whilst there's probably not much drugs being sold at primary schools, once they get to a high school, the drugs are being sold there. And we decided that the best thing to do is start with one level of education for the primary schools and another one for the high schools. And obviously the education for the high schools was more age relevant, and the education for the primary schools was also age relevant. And as a result of this interaction with the primary schools, one of the schools I went to, I mentioned, was Houghton Primary School. And the headmaster there happened to be the brother of the father of the guy that was running the transport company that was moving Glenn Agliotti's drugs around.
What was the name of the person who was moving the drugs around?
Anthony Dormel.
Okay.
So I arranged a meeting with Anthony Dormel's father, which is Chris Dormel. And we had a meeting at their house, be about 20 years ago, maybe more. And we had a meeting at the house. And when I had that first meeting, I suggested that I would like to have a meeting with the son. And I explained to them exactly why. That I'd want this son to understand what's happening with the stuff that he's moving around. Now, we had that meeting and he agreed that actually he always suspected that there was something wrong, but he didn't know what. And he agreed to set out chapter and verse. And as a result, we went to a shipment that he had stored at a warehouse on the East Rand. And there was about 200 million rands worth of drugs there.
What did you do with that information? Once you got to the scene, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was to take a sworn statement from the guy, because what you always like to do is make sure you get something in writing.
Okay, so you got a sworn statement, and what was the next step?
Then I went back to the Scorpions, who I'd met with a couple of years earlier, and I said, listen, I think we've now got something.
So you reported this drug bust to the Scorpions?
They did the drug bust. I didn't do the drug bust.
Okay. So you accompanied the Scorpions to a venue where there was an operation undergoing?
No, I didn't do that either.
Okay.
What I did was, I showed them the sworn statement I had from this individual, and I asked them, would they be prepared to meet with this individual and take this matter over? And they agreed to do that. And then I introduced them. We had a meeting at McDonald's in Bruma. Not Bruma, East Rand Mall. We had a meeting at McDonald's in East Rand Mall. And that would have been about 95, maybe 96. I can't remember the exact year. And we had a meeting there, and we sat there for 4.5 hours, where they interrogated this fellow. And
what is the outcome?
They made a decision to mount an operation.
Okay.
And the operation they mounted lasted for a month or two. And then they busted them and they arrested them all. And then they arrested Glenn Agliotti.
And what was the final, the ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebi?
The ultimate consequence for Mr. Selebi was that he was convicted of 6 counts of corruption and sentenced to 15 years in prison.
From the investigations that you would have conducted, what did you actually discover?
What do you mean?
What came out of your investigations? You said that all of these things that you've been testifying about are things that were on this, like almost on the side. It's not what you were necessarily investigating. The person that you were after was Selebi. But we've spoken about the various things that have came out of the investigations, but not specifically linking to Commissioner Selebi.
Yes, so what happened was I was getting some challenges, shall we say. I got a tip off that there would be an attempt on my life, that I would be murdered. So I started taking more precautions. And then I got a tip off that actually, they decided they couldn't get to me, so they would murder my family. So I moved my family out of the country. And that was in 1996. And then the Scorpions, through their investigation, had dealt with the drugs, the 200 million rands worth of drugs. They'd arrested a number of people. Some of them pleaded guilty and went to prison. They arrested and charged Glenn Agliotti, and they arrested and charged another gentleman by the name of Clinton Nassif, and they entered into plea bargain agreements where they agreed to plead guilty in terms of Section 105A of the Criminal Procedures Act. They agreed to plead guilty and get a suspended sentence and then give evidence about other activities. And the other activities they gave evidence about were the payments that they had made to Jackie Salebi.
Okay. At page 14, at the top of your statement, you say, based on the case I had assembled against him, speaking about Salebi, the then President Kgalema Motlanthe terminated Salebi's contract. In 2010, Salebi was convicted and sentenced to 15 years. This paragraph implies that it was as a result of the investigation that you had conducted against Mr. Salebi.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Perhaps that's a little bit too much, because in fact, what I had done, I carried out an investigation which triggered the production of the evidence which led to Jackie Salebi being arrested and charged.
Okay.
So if it's like anything else, I had started work which became the catalyst for the criminal charges which he faced.
What was the motivation for you investigating him?
As I said earlier, Chairman, I wanted to live in a country where there's a rule of law. I didn't want to live in a country where a chief of police could be so corrupt that he could enter into an agreement that would assist a sitting president to arrest and charge a future possible president. Because I felt that that was like completely wrong, regardless of what and at the time, I didn't know the then who became President Zuma, I didn't know him from a bar of soap. So I had no knowledge.
Would it be fair to say that as a result of Mr. Salebi not granting you security clearance, you then investigated him? What would your comment be to that statement?
Yeah, I think that's not correct. And the reason it's not correct is because it's like a domino effect, isn't it? If you don't do this, this will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen, then that will happen. He was going behind my back and having secret meetings with a view to having me dismissed. Why? Because we refused to kowtow to this idea of allowing his friend. In fact, I went a step further. The criminal case I opened against his friend resulted in his friend going to prison for 5 years. So he just badly wanted me out of the way. And because of the lawlessness of that conduct over 2 or 3 years, I just decided, no, the country doesn't need a commissioner of police who's involved in that type of criminal activity. So I took it upon myself to do the preliminary investigations. And when I handed it to the Scorpions on a plate in 1990, whatever, 5 or 6, there were prima facie evidence, but there was more than that.
Would you say there's a relationship between Commissioner Salebi's arrest and the disbandment of the Scorpions?
I'd say absolutely, without a doubt. Part of the problem, Chairman, is that the Police Service Act makes it clear that no police official may be an active politician. And at the time Jackie Salebi was the Commissioner of Police, He was also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So now suddenly the rules relating to the Police Service Act were being flouted. And not only that, you heard about all these so-called spy tapes. And the spy tapes make it clear that there was a concerted effort on the part of certain persons, one of them being the then head of the Scorpions, a chap by the name of Leonard McCarthy. Because the spy tapes show his conversations with a person by the name of Andre Pienaar, who was based in London. It demonstrated that their plan, and they used code words, but it was all unpacked quite nicely. And they used these code words to show that actually we must get Celebi off the hook and get Zuma on the hook. And in the process, the problem they had was this individual by the name of O'Sullivan. And in those spy tapes, it states categorically, let's not worry about O'Sullivan. We'll bring somebody in that will deal with him decisively. Now, I thought, wow, you know, this is heavy stuff. So I felt that, no, I did the right thing. The country should benefit from a police service with an honest chief of police. And that's what I expected to see. Because if you have an honest chief of police and a hardworking chief of police, you would expect that the people, that the whole thing ripples down and you have a good police service.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Lastly, you say that you got this information from spy tapes, but you were no longer a police reservist. You were also no longer the head of security at AXA. In what capacity were you able to access these spy tapes?
No, well, I didn't access the spy tapes. What happened was, I'm trying to remember her name now. Nomkhobo Jiba. She was the acting national director of public prosecutions. And after Jackie Celebi had been arrested, she was suspended. And she was suspended before his trial had got cracking. She had been suspended. Now, we have to turn the clock back a little bit, because before Jackie Celebi had been criminally charged, they had gone to see the president. The Scorpions had gone to see the president to say, we have a warrant of arrest for the commissioner of police. It wasn't the Scorpions, sorry. It was the National Director of Public Prosecutions, a gentleman by the name of Vusi Pakoli. And he went to see the president together with Garinel, who was the provincial head of the Scorpions. And they went to see the president and they said, we have this warrant which has been issued. And before we execute the warrant, we wanted to inform you as a courtesy that we intend to arrest the commissioner of police. And Thabo Mbeki then had a meeting with Bridget Mbandla, who was the Minister for Justice. And the Minister of Justice immediately suspended Vusi Pakoli. And then after this suspension, the provincial head of crime intelligence was instructed by Jackie Celebi to start tapping the phones.
Mr. O'Sullivan, I really apologize for interrupting you. Where can I find this information? Do we have evidence to that effect where these meetings took place? Do you have minutes to that effect?
So, Chairman, it's common cause. I'm sorry to have to say, but if you go back in time, it was all over the newspapers. It's common cause that Vusi Pakoli was suspended, pending an inquiry to determine his fitness to be in office. It's common cause that this all happened in a very short period of time. You had the Polokwane conference, then you had the, immediately after the Polokwane conference, President Mbeki was still the president.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Just to bring you back to what the question actually was, the question was, how did you get to know about the conversations that were where spyware was used? That was the specific question.
They were published in the media.
Okay, thank you.
I think either the Mail and Guardian or the Times. They were
Thank you.
published and they quoted from it.
So you read them in the media?
And not only that, I spoke to the journalist.
Okay.
And he sent me a copy of the tapes, not the tapes, but the transcript of the tapes, because they.
But that your source basically was the media. That was the
Correct.
question. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Awazal. Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to recognize the following honorable members who have joined us, who have come to support the work that the committee is doing. Honorable Mautwe, the Chief Whip of the EFF in the National Assembly. Honorable Noluchungu, Honorable Mkalipi, Honorable Matiase, Honorable Nehaus, Honorable Ntangwini, and Honorable Makesini, the Chief Whip of the EFF in the NCOP. I recognize you, Honorable Kobe, from Action SA, and we want to thank you so much for the support that you are giving to the committee. Honorable members, you were with us in the morning, Honorable Mkalipi, and you still found it reasonable to come back in the afternoon. We want to thank you so much. We are going to take a break now. And thank you so much, Advocate Mkiza, for leading evidence in the latter part of the session. We are going to take a break and we will come back for the final session, which will run from 18 hours until 19 hours. And I'm going to plead with honorable members that you can see that we are moving at a snail pace. And what this does is it reduces our time for interaction with the witness tomorrow. We are still on paragraph 38 of 175 paragraphs statement. And this does not bode well for us. If we can still try and allow the evidence leaders to run through the statement so that tomorrow we have sufficient time to engage with the witness. May we please rise and leave the chambers and come back at 6 o'clock.
You want to scone? You want to scone?
Huh?
You want to scone?
No, I don't eat stuff like that.
No.